Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Nithsdale Area Committee, which is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I will refer to them formally using the title, for example, Councillor, so that it is clear that who are councillors and who, by the process of elimination, are officers. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute, and if you are in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members, and no material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function, and then join. And when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide the reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Tracy, can you provide the sedgerant indicating who is participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everyone. We've got 16 members present in total, 11 members present here in person at Council HQ, being the Chair, Vice Chair, Councillor Bell, Councillor John Campbell, Councillor Hislop, Councillor Malcolm Johnson, Councillor Little, Councillor Slater, Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Stitt and Ryan McLaughlin from the Youth Council. And we've got 5 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Beretti, Councillor Blake, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Rowe and Youth Councillor Joe Goldsworthy. I have got 4 apologies, one from Councillor Walters, Councillor Wood and 2 Youth Councillors, Maisie Brown and Ava Norzratsady. And 2 members not present at the start of the meeting is Councillor Dorward and Councillor Jordan, who indicated that they will join as soon as possible. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Do members have any statement of connection or declaration of interest to declare based on the definition, statement of connection? For transparency reasons, members may wish to make a public statement or declaration of interest. Members would now require to leave the meeting for that item. Item 3. Yes, Jim.
Thanks, Provost. Statement of connection, agenda item 8 and agenda item 9. I'm Chairman of Sanker Enterprise Company, and we are working with the Council delivering an accessible play park in Belcrescent and Sanker, and we're also working with the Council on a place plan, and we're being supported by our ward managers. So, and if the Sanker Enterprise Company appears in any other agenda items, please be aware that I have a statement of connection. There are no financial or policy implications, so I intend to remain.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. Agenda item 8, page 87, College Mains, which is Wheatley South, 45 units. The land and connection still is ownership to our family, so I'll be declaring interest.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Any further declarations? Thank you. We'll now move to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting for the 13th of November 2024. Are we happy to note the minute? Do we have yes? Thank you. Item 4, we'll move on to item 4. Our first performance report is the Police Scotland Area Performance Report, April to September 2024. A welcome to Chief Inspector Duncan Cameron, who is in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Can I just say it is great to see a reappearance of the police report to this area committee. This report is caveated with the reminder that percentages can be skewed by the small numbers involved in the data. The appendix is very clearly laid out, offering figures and some percentages and comparators with previous years. I know members also feel that it would possibly also be helpful to get comparators with other areas of Dumfries and Galloway, with national averages, just to complete the picture. I'm sure members will welcome the report and the amount of local detail, and will have questions to help unpack some of the data contained in the appendix. We have Chief Inspector Duncan Cameron is here to answer any questions. Do we have any questions? Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. It's a comprehensive report here, from road safety to a number of other issues and violence and disorder crimes. The issue I was going to maybe ask you about road safety, and obviously looking at speeding offences, 1,046, speeding offences. Now, how many of them actually, well, obviously maybe it doesn't say, how many of them actually account to the CCV camera van, and how many actually account for, unmarked police cars and your marked traffic cars? So I just want an indication, give me a picture of what the camera van's doing and what your unmarked cars are doing, just a sort of proportion. Have you any idea of the figures there?
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate the question. And just before I answer, if you would oblige, I'd just like to say I'm very happy to be here after some absence from the police for a number of years. So it's good to be back, and hopefully I will be able to give you some meaningful responses. However, having said that, that specific question that you've asked, I don't have a breakdown of how many have been detected by, for example, the mobile camera vans versus mobile patrols. So something I can take back to our road policing team and provide you with that separately, if that would be useful.
Through the chair, Chief Inspector, I think the best thing would be if all the members of the area committee maybe got an update on that as well. Yes. So maybe through the chair, through it could be handed out. So it's just an indication, because a number of members of the public used to ask me, you see the unmarked traffic cars in A76, A75, and you wonder just what proportion from the vans are, you're getting targeting. No, absolutely. It's not information that's been broken down in the report, as you can see, and if that's something that's useful going forward, I will ask if that can be included in future reports as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and make this nice and easy. Welcome back. I've got 3 points, if you don't mind, Chair. Just one on the overall report. I know we've had an issue with policing in this area and the amount of police we actually have, and I wonder how much of these percentages we're seeing as a reduction are actually due to the lack of policing. I see that, and Councillor Bell's already picked up on some of the speeding offences, how much of that is actually because we've not been able to detect as much as we normally would in that proactive manner that we would normally do it. And I think it goes to show overall just how vital it is to have those police officers on the ground, and to make sure that our numbers are kept at a good level. I know they do a fantastic job locally, and I think many areas are actually quite jealous of what we have, so it's always important to keep that up. Just on 2 bits in the report. The first one, the common assault on emergency worker. What exactly happens with that? Does that go automatically to court, and do we see charges being brought? And on the subject of the domestic abuse on page 26, I had a look at the Scottish Government figures, and for 23-24 there was a 3% increase, so I'm surprised to see this year there's been a drop. Obviously we don't have the 24-25 figures, I don't know if maybe you've got them. But also for both male and female cases, are we getting it right, or is it being underreported this year? And if so, what are we doing to ensure that we keep the numbers sufficient? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor, as well. I'll try and address them in the order that you've asked. So I do welcome your positive comments about the policing performance in Dumfries and Galloway, and obviously we're specifically focusing on Nithsdale today. As the area commander, I'm absolutely proud of the work that we're doing in Nithsdale, and I think overall, whilst the report as a collective, there are some figures up, some figures down, my overall view is it's a very positive picture that we are demonstrating our commitment to the people of Dumfries and Galloway, commitment to keeping people safe, and actually working with the resources that we've got. It's no secret that it's a challenge with all the competing demands that we have in policing to meet everything at all times. However, we have a fairly robust process through our internal tasking coordination processes to look at the greatest threat, risk and harm, whether that be vulnerability, vulnerable groups, vulnerable people, or particular trends and spikes in crime types. So overall, I would say that you mentioned, some of the decrease in some of the road traffic figures. However, I would also mirror that to say we've actually had a very high level of detections with driving under the influence offences, which is what we're seeing as one of the greatest causes of death and serious injury on our roads. So it's finding that balance of where we use our finite resource to have the greatest effect. So it is just that constant ebb and flow of looking at the data and adjusting our patrol activity, our initiatives to address that most effectively. So the second point, and forgive me, was around about emergency workers' common assault figures. So I think you'd asked if those were automatically reported to court. So in every case, it's essentially if there's sufficient evidence there for a case to be presented to the Procurator Fiscal for consideration, then that will be done. Clearly, the vast majority of the emergency worker offences are detected because whether it be on police officers or other emergency workers, ambulance staff, our colleagues in the fire service, etc., there's usually sufficient corroborative evidence. So in all cases, those will go forward. It would be extremely rare that an assault on an emergency worker would not proceed to a report, and obviously it's then within the gift of the fiscal to how they deal with the case at court. One of the things just on that point that I am looking forward to seeing a positive impact there is the introduction of body-worn video cameras for police officers, which is coming to Dumfries and Galloway, albeit probably a little bit later than we would like. But I think it's well evidenced in other police forces and elsewhere in the country that that has a really positive impact on the number of assaults being perpetrated on emergency workers as well. So whilst we're not quite there yet, that is coming, and hopefully it will be very positively received. Just coming back, I think your third point, Councillor, was around about protecting people at risk of harm, and it was the sexual assault and the domestic abuse figures. So apologies, could you just refresh specifically what it was you were asking for clarity on?
Yeah, that's fine. So it was just both the male and female cases. Are we getting it right? I'm just concerned about the amount of male cases that haven't been reported, and also that decrease in female cases as well. Is that being underreported, and if so, what are we doing to make sure that people know exactly how they can report it and they've got that confidence? Thank you.
No, thank you very much for just for clarifying that again. So my view, having looked at the figures and obviously discussed in some detail with colleagues who work in public protection within the division, is that overall we are in a very positive place. So if you allow me, just I will give a wee bit of background just around each of the sort of crime types. So in respect of crimes of rape, whilst there's been a rise over the period, which is one crime, there's an absolute commitment from us to pursue those who are responsible, which I think is evident in our detection rate, which is extremely positive. And ultimately that provides confidence in victims to come forward and report to us. And it gives that trust and confidence in both policing and the partners that we work with that we are getting it right. We adopt an absolutely victim-centred approach, and the feedback that we have from the partner agencies that we work closely with is that what we are doing here in Dumfries and Galloway is very, very positive. The quality of service that we're giving to victims and survivors of sexual crime, I believe, is of a very, very high standard. Other crimes of sexual assault, there's been a decrease over the period, which represents a decrease of 2 crimes. So we are talking about quite small numbers. But again, I would actually view that as a positive in so much as the work that we're doing proactively to actually reduce instances of these crimes taking place. So I see that as indicative of the good work that's being done there. So again, the commitment by our division, alongside the overall approach, it's a priority for Police Scotland, as you know, is having really positive outcomes in the communities. So domestic abuse, again, is a crime type that we're determined to really impact on the consequences of that, both for females, for males, for children and families, and the kind of wider community is significant. So again, we've had a decrease in the reporting period, but not to repeat myself again, I think that is actually should be seen as a positive, that the work we're doing we're not just continually responding to crime, we are actually impacting on the instances of crime when they occur. So the male aspect of domestic abuse, I think, is something which isn't often covered, and we previously had 2 reports, we've got none at the moment, but just for absolute completeness, we work with partners who are involved with both male and female victims of domestic abuse, so that we're meeting the needs of all, irrespective. It's not we're not excluding male victims in any way, shape or form. And again, I would like to think that positivity and the relationship we have with our partners means that we do have a level of confidence that people will come forward and report. So more widely, we obviously have our kind of multi-agency partnerships with social work, NHS, and others. We're supported with Assist now in Dumfries and Galloway to support victims of domestic abuse, Women's Aid, and we continue to see a really high level of engagement from our kind of domestic abuse disclosure scheme, which has been running now for a number of years, but the number of referrals that we're getting through that, both internally and from external sources, it's positive that we're getting those referrals, albeit we would like to see less referrals, because that would mean hopefully less risk. But I think I would just conclude that our overall violence against women and girls strategy is firmly embedded within our local division, and we're absolutely committed to that, which, as a collective, I believe we're in a very positive position. So giving you quite a lot of detail there, Councillor, but I hope that answers it and gives you some confidence about what we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson, and thank you for your detailed reply. Councillor Little?
I'd forgotten I'd put my hand up there. Sorry, thank you for this report. Mine got a couple of questions which are really just silly little questions, daft lassie questions. On page 22, we have serious assault and common assault. Is the difference only the resulting injury? I mean, what's the difference between that? And the other one is, on page 24, when does careless driving become dangerous driving? Is that again just injury and damage caused? And how do we monitor the careless driving so it doesn't become dangerous?
So the first question first. In essence, you're absolutely right. It's the definition, a category of assault is determined by the extent of injury caused. And there needs to be a degree of seriousness to that with either laceration, broken bone, etc. So a common assault would be, for example, a push, a shove, or a punch, a slap, which doesn't leave a lasting injury or something that requires a medical intervention. So in its simplest terms, that is the sort of difference there. Careless driving and dangerous driving, again, has a distinction in the terminology of how they're categorised from the likelihood of injury being caused or the risk of more serious harm being caused by the manner of driving. Carelessness would be, for example, making a manoeuvre which, as stated, is deemed careless, is not being given due care and attention, as opposed to dangerous, which is driving in a more predetermined fashion, deliberately, deciding to, for example, not stop at a stop line, going through a red light, driving at excessively high speed and not complying with the rules of the road, whereas carelessness is more maybe an absent-minded disregard of the rules of the road in the given circumstances. So it can be quite subjective and is determined obviously on each case on its own merits, but again will be aggravated clearly by if there's been collision, any type of injury, etc., etc. So if you like, carelessness tends to be at clearly the lower end of that scale where there's no injury or no risk of serious injury being caused. Does that answer that question for you?
No, that's perfectly clear. But I'm assuming that the careless driving is when they've been seen, because I'm sure there's an awful lot of careless driving that doesn't get picked up. But no, it's perfectly clear. I know they're really small questions, and I'm not quibbling over semantics, but it was just to get a full understanding of when that moves into the next phase. But it is just injury and damage, which is quite understandable. Thank you.
So just to round that off, both any driving offences can obviously be reported by any member of the public. Quite often they will be witnessed by officers who are out on patrol on the roads, and they are proactively then taking action. But it can be that the report might come in initially that it would appear to be careless driving, but then on assessment it's dangerous, or vice versa. So we just judge it on its own merits, depending on the circumstances, which when you think about being out on the road, can obviously, there's so many variables that have to be taken into account: time of day, weather, traffic, etc. So, okay, I hope that helps.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. Morning, Duncan. On page 22, the detection rate for serious assaults is 90%, and I think that's brilliant. But on page 25, the detection rate for housebreaking is 30%, which means it's only 1 out of 3 that we're managing to find a result on. And I find that worrying. And to my main point, if you like, if you read the Information Gallery Standard any Friday, you will get the court report with an individual's name, street, their age, gender, offence, and yet we only get a blanket Nithsdale statistic, which is useful, but especially in housebreaking, it might be that all the housebreakings in my ward or Dumfries ward or whatever, and unless we know where these, I wouldn't want any other information other than the locality that the crime is committed in, because we can then implement a number of measures alerting our communities to the fact that there's a sequence of a series of housebreakings being committed, which isn't the case at present. And I just wonder if you intend to drill down further into the statistics in the annual report, it's a 6-monthly one, and you bring that information, or if you can consider that, because unless we get a more intense assessment of where these crimes are committed, first of all, we won't know what's actually happening on the ground per se, but more than that, we won't be able to alert the communities that are involved where maybe the majority of one particular crime is being committed. And I wouldn't want any information about individual members of the public. It's just the locality sort of information I would like to see you bring forward. Thank you.
No, thanks, Councillor Dempster. I absolutely understand your point around about that, and something I'll again take back to our kind of data analyst team that obviously prepared the data as to what is possible. I don't know what has been provided going forward for the other area committees. Obviously, this is our first time back after an absence, so it may be something that's achievable in due course. But if you would oblige me to take that away, and I can come back and respond to area committee collectively. Just to address the point around about the detection rate, yes, I absolutely agree. Would like that to be higher. The numbers, thankfully, that we're talking about, and I don't want to trivialise that, but the numbers, thankfully, are relatively low that we're speaking of. But every crime there is a crime against a property, somebody's property, and I absolutely recognise that. So something we continue to work hard on. It's not a huge trend in Dumfries and Galloway, thankfully, overall, but it remains something that we're committed to improving upon, so I would hope that you see that in future reports.
That's fine, and thanks for that reassurance, Duncan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's just to slightly extend the question from Councillor Bell on page 24, is have we got an idea, or could we get a proportion between how many of the speeding crimes and offences are on traffic just going through our region, i.e. towards Ken Ryan or going east, and how much is actually happening on our side roads and in the towns? It would be useful just to see how much is just traffic parking through our maybe regular drivers in our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Again, as you can see, the information that's provided in the report isn't broken down to that level. So, as with Councillor Bell's request, if that's something that I can take away and ask if it can be more granular going forward, and if I understand your question, it is to determine a sort of split between major trunk roads and minor roads. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
If you can certainly leave that with me, and that's something again that I will seek clarity on for going forward. But at the present time, unfortunately, I can't provide that level of detail.
Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the report today. My question is derelict buildings within the town, and obviously some of them are still getting vandalised, and that's something a number of constituents are raising with me, because these crimes are continuing on, and is there any way that they can be monitored more often, or do you check buildings sometimes? Do you actually go to check any of these buildings where these crimes are being committed? It's the way I look at it, that the more the building gets damaged, the less it's worth at the end of the day. And if you have a building, you can do something with it. So people's concerns is the fact that it's happening nearby their houses, and also windows being broken. And although they've been detected sometimes, they seem to be still going back. And I've said at previous meetings, maybe CCTV could be utilised. I know it's maybe not all your problem as such, but I think if more CCTV was used, it's not expensive, and it can track and alert people like yourselves that there's someone there. I feel like maybe more should be done to try and stop this happening, because sometimes it can get really quite serious with these buildings and totally destroyed in some cases. Thank you. Sorry, one other point. Parking in the town, I do know that you have difficulty fitting it into your workloads now. But what I would ask is, the lines in the town and the signage is pretty poor. So is that a situation that if you give someone a ticket because these lines and the signs are poor, they can actually have that admonished? Is that one of the reasons why maybe you can't give out as many tickets as you would like? Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the question, Councillor Slater. So I'll take your last point first because it's probably the easiest to answer. Some of the markings, whether it's Dumfries Town Centre or otherwise, are probably, you're right, in need of refreshing. Ultimately, if it's a known and a visible parking restriction, the ticket is valid to be issued. Somebody who receives a ticket could then appeal that, and it's up to appeal on individual circumstances to whether or not the ticket was correctly issued. But ultimately, if that area has a restriction in place, the ticket can be issued, and then if somebody wishes to appeal it, they may do. But we don't routinely, look for issues with the markings in terms of if there's something that's obviously amiss, we'll feed that back in to colleagues in the council, roads team, etc. But naturally, I think officers going about their duties, I can give you assurance if they're able to give a ticket, they will give a ticket. So that hopefully addresses that point. In terms of derelict buildings, absolutely is a problem. We can probably speak about individual cases, but I don't want to. So more generally, we've had some very significant derelict buildings in terms of size, of which we don't have local owners, people who are some quite remote from, let alone Dumfries, maybe even from the UK. It can be very, very difficult to engage with the building owners in terms of improving the security. It's their responsibility to do that. Something that we have worked hand in hand with the council in particular around where buildings become dangerous. And that really probably is my main concern over and above the crime aspect, is that whether it be young people or otherwise, that these buildings are in a state of disrepair, or people entering buildings and maybe come into harm because there's floors missing or there's other hazards. So we have done a lot of work in that space over the last number of years. It's extremely difficult, as you'd imagine, given the size of, and you're speaking about Dumfries specifically, because even out with the town centre, there's quite a number of significant empty buildings that we see issues at. CCTV would undoubtedly be useful. However, again, a lot of that falls into the remit of the building owner to provide the CCTV, and it's extremely challenging to get people to spend the money to invest in that. Often they have no apparent interest in securing the buildings to that standard and maintaining a CCTV system. So where we have public space CCTV, that's obviously something that we can use and do use successfully. We have CCTV operators that will monitor that. Other times we're relying on reacting to CCTV evidence after the fact. So it is a frustration, it is a challenge. I can give you assurance that some of our problematic sites have had a lot of police attention and a lot of effort through our antisocial behaviour officer and partners in the council and others to try and prompt action to be taken by private owners, private landlords. But I can say nothing other than it's extremely challenging to get headway with that, and it is a frustration. So the focus for myself and through the community policing teams is more about prevention and stopping young people going to these properties in the first instance, and through diversion programmes and the kind of youth work, etc., and the DG youth work side of things that we work closely with. That's an area, particularly during school holidays, that will continue to be very much a focus and a priority for the community policing team. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Chief Inspector. Thank you, Councillor Slater. I think he's answered the questions quite well, and we're sticking to the scrutiny of the report, the performance report. Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 24, and it is the, frankly alarming figure of driving under the influence and the massive increase. And I'm assuming here we're talking about driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Is part of this big rise due to the fact that you're getting better at detecting drugs? Because I know that was an issue in the past.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm actually glad you've raised that point. I was probably going to introduce it myself before I concluded, is that that's exactly the case. So the change in legislation and recording now is that previously we would have talked about driving under the influence of alcohol, but it now includes drugs, and actually quite disturbingly and alarmingly, the larger increase is now of those driving under the influence of drugs. So absolutely, for every one of these statistics, that's a detection that police have proactively come across, but we are hugely supported by the intelligence that we get from communities and from the public reporting people driving or suspected to be driving under alcohol or drugs, which I suppose I look at that as a positive, that we're getting that engagement from the public, and that we are then turning that into detections and hopefully convictions down the line. But I think it does speak to a trend which is not exclusive to our area, unfortunately, that people are far more comfortable and blasé about the risk of driving with drugs in their system. We now have drug wipes that we can use at the roadside, which at the moment are being used by our traffic officers really successfully, which again is testament to the figures that you see there. So I suppose it's one of these, it's a good news story that we're detecting people, but I share your alarm and concern that so many people are continuing to drive under the influence and clearly putting themselves and others at risk.
Thank you. Our Youth Councillor Ryan, thank you.
My question to you is, how do emergency services build relationships with young people?
Thanks for your question, Ryan. So, in a number of ways, to be honest, and if you know, colleagues from the fire service here, I won't speak for them, but we do a lot of joint working as well. You'll be familiar, I'm sure, with Operation Safety that we run annually and have done for the last 25 years or so, and is extremely successful, engaging with primary 7 age children before they move into secondary school. That's a really excellent opportunity every year that we have that captive audience, and really quite unique in Scotland. I think that as a region we get all of our young people of that age group together over a number of weeks and are able to provide really valuable inputs to them about things to help them stay safe, and hopefully, and I have seen in practice that builds really good relationships with emergency services through doing that. But outside of that type of event, we have youth engagement officers in Police Scotland who split their time between working in schools and then in the communities, and are heavily involved in running initiatives along with partners in DG Youth Work and other outside agencies to provide both an opportunity for young people to engage in really positive activities, whether that's sports related or otherwise. Our attendance at events such as, you know, Good Neighbours, Youth Beats, where we have, you know, we're there, we have a dual role of providing safety and security for everybody that's there, but also hopefully in a more relaxed setting and a bit more informal. I've seen excellent work over a number of years now with the police really positively engaging with young people there. So I think it's easy to say that you know, the police are maybe seen as a sort of a punitive organisation. We're only out there to sort of catch people doing wrong. But I hope, from your perspective and others, that in terms of young people, we absolutely rely on that good relationship with young people. And it's worth highlighting that it's only a very, very small percentage of young people that engage in, whether it be antisocial behaviour or other kind of crime, and we really value the positive contribution of working with young people as well, and actually what your voice is. if there's something that you think we could be doing differently, I'd be very happy to hear it. But I do think we have quite well-established links and programmes that we do get this right, but that's not to say I'm content to just rest on those laurels. If you had other suggestions, that's something I'd be happy to take away, because I'm always keen to hear how we can do that better.
Thank you, Ryan. Councillor Dorward.
Good morning, members. Good morning, Chair. Thank you for allowing me in, given that I was a bit late to the meeting this morning. I appreciate that. Thank you for the report. Looking at page 23, reducing harm caused by substance misuse. It's quite prescient this morning that drug death figures are out from Police Scotland and saying suspected drug deaths fell by 11% in Scotland, but it still remains the highest figure in Europe, unfortunately, so not something to be proud of. Every drug death is one too many, but looking at the figures themselves, this is 16 drug supply charges, which means that the charges have fallen by 14.9% against a 5-year average. And you're looking at also drug possession charges have fallen, which is somewhat different, but looking at drug supply charges, and suppliers are probably the people you want to target in terms of reducing drug misuse in the area. Is there any rationale for that? Which is a simple question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Yes, I'll probably start by echoing your sentiments about the kind of drug death figures. Obviously, it is a statistic that nobody likes to see, and as you'd expect, drugs remain a real key area of focus, a real priority for us. So looking at raw figures, it's always useful to have a wee bit of background to that. So supply cases can obviously vary in magnitude and you know the quantity of drugs effectively that we're talking about. So looking solely at those numbers, there has been an increase in those figures, which is positive. The possession cases, have gone down, but that is a feature of our kind of focus more on using our resources more sort of creatively to target supply of drugs, as opposed to necessarily the possession cases, which can make attractive reading in terms of lots of possession detections. But quite frankly, if they are for very small amounts of drugs, that's not having the same impact as you rightly have articulated, disrupting or otherwise intervening in those that are involved in supply of drugs. So it's just about a change in focus, I suppose, to some degree, in using the resources that we've got to best effect. So if we look at the 2023 figures of 12 and then 2024 of 16, it's a small but important rise, and that's something that I know, working with colleagues, particularly in our CID and kind of proactive teams, we're looking to increase further in the coming period. So I have some initiatives in mind for the coming year, which will hopefully have a positive impact on that. But overall, yes, we ultimately want to make this figure of drug deaths a lot lower. And I think the most effective way of doing that is continuing to target those that are involved in the supply of drugs.
Thank you. Councillor Slater, you wanted to come back in?
Yes, Chair. It was just the fact that when Ryan brought that up and the Chief Constable said about operation safety, I think that's absolutely great, operation safety. We were involved in it for a number of years because it was held out at Heath Hall in the big unit there, and we supplied about 8,000 square feet, but it ran for 3 weeks eventually, and it was all primary 7, if I remember. And in the 3 weeks, 1,300 children went through that process. So it's it's really, really good for the children to see all the different things. They can go home and tell their parents how to do it. Anyway, thank you. It was just a comment, really.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. If there are no further questions or comments, I would like to thank Chief Inspector Cameron for his attendance here today, and we'll move to the recommendations. Members are asked to scrutinise the performance report for the Nithsdale from Police Scotland for the period April 24 to September 24 as detailed in the appendix. Thank you. Move on to item 5. Our second report today is the 6-month performance report from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. As usual, this report contains a lot of good information at a Nithsdale level. It was encouraging to read that road traffic collisions attended to in this reporting period is down by 25%. And also encouraging is that deliberate fire setting has had a huge 52% decrease. Thanks again for the detail in the report, and I'll pass over to members. And we have Station Commander Kevin McCartney and Watch Commander Scott Finlett are here to answer any questions or address any member comments. I'll open the floor to Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, this report here, fire report, was of about 6 months ago, and I know a number in the North West and Nithsdale ward I represent. Deliberate fires was down to a number of buildings, and owners, well, probably we're one of the owners as well. Hopefully, it'll be demolished soon. But I can understand that is probably going to come to an end if some of these buildings are flattened or going to be secure. But the issues I really want to address, obviously, looking at accidental dwelling across the ward, fires across the ward. Obviously, does this count for household fires or someone setting fire to a car? Just wondering, how do you, what accidental fires come into this category other than deliberate fire? So is it household? Is it someone setting a fire in a garden, a shed, or electrical fire? Or would it be someone setting fire to a car outside in a car park? So would the deliberate fire come under that category?
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Accidental fires.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor Bell. Accidental dwelling fires, it is limited to the dwelling itself and possibly the boundary of the property. It depends what is on fire, usually limited to the property itself.
Right, thank you. And just in case, I thought it was maybe a link to a car outside as well, a link to the property as well. Sometimes you get someone that sets fire to a car.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. Morning, gentlemen. Your report itself, I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. It seems as much as you get not only the information station by station I would want to see, but something of a newsletter and information featuring staff and stations as well. I think it's great, which makes me worry about page 39, where we're asked to note that it's unlikely that future reports will be the same. And I just think it's so good it'd be a shame if you changed it too much, because it's a very useful format. We get information and we get highlighted stations that are doing something unique with the community and with members of staff. And having been a former member for 20 years, it's great that that's recognised. And the only other point I'd want to make, and it's no fun, Nithsdale, but on page 62, there's talk about youth volunteering scheme, which appeals to me because, and I know it's a particular target group that you're dealing with, but it says in its final year. I would have thought it'd been better to try and roll it out rather than bring it to an end after 3 years. And it's maybe not for you to answer today, maybe an observation you just take back to your brigade, that where we can encourage young people to come in. I see as well they're doing litter picking and representing the fire service. I just think it's great. So it's a commendation, if you like, or a bit of praise for you. I think it's good. And if you pass back the youth service thing, I'd appreciate that, because I think it's important to continue stuff like that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Councillor. The report is changing nationally, and the data that we are supplied is going onto a new system, and the report will be generated automatically, but it will give us the opportunity to provide comments against each section if that's required. The youth scheme, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about that, Scott, or...
The youth scheme running primarily in Stranraer just now has been running for 3 years. You can imagine it is volunteer, it is led by volunteers. They've done fantastic, they've been recognised nationally. It's a great thing. Yes, it's coming to an end. Potentially we are looking at rolling it out in other areas of the region following the CSAT at Stranraer, but as it's volunteer, but we're relying on a lot of goodwill from a lot of members of staff, so it's not an easy thing to do. But Stranraer, they've been commended nationally, and it's been a fantastic thing. It really has.
Thanks very much for that, folks.
Thank you. Councillor Slater, did you put... Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the report today. As I say, Councillor Dempster says it's well laid out. It looks very good. The question is, electric vehicles, there's more and more of these getting on the roads now, and some, unfortunately, go on fire. So is there special ways to treat them because it's an electric fire? Is there any special ways that you are changed the way you work for these type of vehicles if there is a fire in them? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Councillor Slater. Our crews are aware of the increase in the amount of electric vehicles on the roads and the different challenges that these present if they are involved in fire. This is still ongoing as we gather more data and as we become more aware, but we are staying in touch with the advances with the vehicles and how to tackle them, and our crews are briefed in how to deal with them and how to stay safe whilst they're at car fires.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions or comments? Councillor Campbell.
Thanks. I was getting a green light there instead of the red light. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Provost, and thanks for the report. I'm just looking at page 48, and it's welcome to see that the road traffic collisions are reducing. There's 31 there. However, just below that, you've got the casualties have actually increased, which is quite worrying, I suppose. And even further down the page, you've got the age profile. And one of the ages where I seem to sit in, which is between 50 and 79, it's quite worrying that it's that kind of age profile, and probably even between 20 and 49. But what's even more worrying is the number of serious injuries. So I welcome the reduced number of road traffic collisions, but it's the casualties which worry me the most. And I'm just wondering whether you have some kind of programme to try and get out to members of the public the seriousness, you know, of the driving, shall we say. Thanks. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Just to echo the reduction in the amount of accidents with the amount of casualties isn't unique to Dumfries and Galloway. It's happening nationally. We have a few theories on that. More people travelling in cars, we try to encourage car sharing, so when there is an accident, it tends to involve more people. Your age groups, your demographics, we tend to, probably as a society, focus on young people as the danger. I think this, for a number of years now, is the older generation involved. Whether that's less young people are driving, I'm unsure. Putting forward initiatives to young people is easy. They're in an environment, they're at school, they're at clubs, it's very easy to target. The adults can be more difficult. It's voluntary for them to attend. I'm sure you can imagine. We do put on events. We also have an issue where older people, where potentially we're looking at their driving competence, especially in a rural area. One of the fallbacks that might avoid them engaging, that's their independence. So it can be a very, very hard target to kind of to identify. But as I said, as long as accidents are going down, that's good. But yeah, the casualties are going up, but that's echoed nationally. If I can just reply to Councillor Slater's comment earlier on the electric vehicles, Statistically, we're seeing the electrical vehicles, when they're on fire, Kevin says that they do draw a lot more attention. It's quite a topic. But there is no statistics to show that electric vehicles go on fire more readily than your petrol or diesel vehicles. They do draw more attention. They require a different approach, but nothing statistically showing that they go on fire anymore. We are having more electric fires because there are more electric cars on the roads. Just elaborate on what Kev said earlier about the electric vehicles. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Page 39, under staffing, I have a question. I'll let you turn to the right page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, 6th paragraph, and it says we no longer report on male-female percentage as our department sizes vary and can skew the figures. Now, I understand that. And you're also saying what we can report is that we have a workforce which has women in every duty system and department, and we continue to develop a workforce which reflects the communities which we serve. It's a bit vague. I don't mean that in a rude way, because I think it's important to have, would it be possible, or can you tell me, are you encouraging women to join the fire service in Dumfries and Galloway? And is there any way of providing ratios in terms of male-female in certain areas, if possible? Because it's a bit concerning that you're not doing reporting on. I get the overall objective of encouraging, and you have a workforce that reflects the communities which we serve, but is there any? Can you maybe answer why, if you are, how would you encourage women to join the service? Because there aren't many women in the fire service in Dumfries and Galloway. That's an observation. I don't know the numbers because you're not giving me the numbers, but there aren't as many as men. So how would we encourage women to join the service? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Would you like to take that?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor Dorward. I don't have specific figures to hand, but we can assure you that whenever we carry out recruitment events, that we target all the groups within our communities to ensure that the workforce reflects as diverse a workforce as we can. We have had female-specific events in the past, and we do as much as we can to support them when they come to these events.
Thank you. Is there any chance that there could be something sent back as a ratio of male to female in Dumfries and Galloway? Or would that be something, Councillor Dorward, if possible?
Sorry, yes, we can come back and certainly supply those figures, and we can give a breakdown to the departments if necessary.
That's lovely, thank you. Are there any further comments or questions? Thank you. Well, just thank you for your report today, and also for the photos in the report which kind of personalised your celebrations, which was quite nice to have. So we'll thank Commander Kevin McCartney and Scott Findlay for your attendance today. Thank you. We'll now move to recommendations. Members are asked to scrutinise the performance report for Nithsdale from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for the period the 1st of April 24 to the 30th of September 24, as detailed in the appendix. Are members happy to scrutinise? Thank you. We'll now move to item 6. We're moving on to our council performance reports. We have the 6-month assessment of facilities, waste and neighbourhood services. Members will be pleased to see that all project targets are either on track, completed or within the acceptable limits. And it's good to see that our communities are being consulted regarding their views on litter reduction, and that plans for this are now getting underway. It's good also to get a brief update on the work jointly between the Council and our local communities to realise the Bells Crescent Inclusive Play Park. Nicola Simpson and Jennifer Scott are on teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 64, 4.5.1, the review of the litter reduction action plan. Now, I realise it's been delayed, but it's getting underway, and I'm pleased that there's a clear timetable here to progress it. But all I'm really wanting to say was I really welcome this coming forward, because I know we have teams out trying to keep the place tidy, and it's incredibly frustrating that when people come out that the litter gets scattered about everywhere. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this report in September, and hopefully we can take action. And I would expect that we should get some really good results out of it. So basically, I'm just welcoming the fact that this is being taken forward and everyone's being consulted.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Would Nicola or Jennifer have any comments to make on that?
No particular comments to make on that at this time. We have been keen to take this forward as well, and unfortunately we're a wee bit delayed, so we're looking forward to it as well, and I think we've got a good engagement programme lined up there, so we're hoping we will get some good results from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Councillor Hislop.
Just to repeat the comments of Councillor Johnson last night at Tynall Community Council, it was one of the major talking points was the state of the roads, whereby there's litter strewn everywhere, and I think this is timely. It needs to be implemented as quick as possible, because things are getting worse rather than improving. Yes, they are, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. Probably rehearsing what Councillor Johnson and Councillor Haslett have said. We've tried to engage with the community in litter picks on the A76 and told we can't because it's too dangerous. So I do think that in all of our trunk roads and arterial routes, we have to find some way of getting rid of the litter. It brings the whole district and whole region into disrepute. And on a positive note, that was page 65. On a positive note, the focus groups, and it does say, this is on the development questionnaire presentation documents on page 65, it does say focus groups, road haulage companies, schools, community groups. Community councils are our statutory consultees, and I know they will be involved, but maybe we should feature them as a group that we consult, because we are required to consult them anyway, and we engage very closely with community councils. And the last thing, again, a very positive note, the Bell Crescent Play Park will be completed by end of March, April, weather permitting. It's well in its way. It's looking fantastic, and it's creating some excitement locally. So well done, Nicola and her team. And I'm looking forward to seeing the kids playing it. It's such a pleasure to see kids out enjoying themselves, and that will enhance the whole area once it's completed and operational. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Jennifer or Nicola, do you have any comments to make?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we will of course be consulting with community councils as well. We always do in these pieces of work. I had just neglected to actually name them there, so apologies for that, but we will most definitely be including community councillors in that. And yes, the Bell Crescent Play Park is moving along really well, and I am also looking forward to seeing it in person once it's completed. So I'll possibly see you there, Councillor Dempster.
Thanks very much, Nicola. I'll look forward to that.
Thank you. Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Chair. On page 65 of the report, point 4.5.2, that's the phase 3 of the Memorial Headstone Safety Project. I've had quite a few representations from some of the community councils in Ward 7 about the way that the headstones are being tagged as unsafe. And on inspection, or let's say with going around with some of the communities, I saw some stones that were only a foot to 16 inches in height being tagged as unsafe, whilst many that were 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot in height were left untagged. The issue seems, one of the questions is, has anyone actually approached any of these community councils where the cemeteries are to find out any information about the locale, you know, the locals, the families who actually own these? Because many families have moved away from the area, and how do you fix, or how do you fix stones if they are supposed to be fixing them when they don't even know that they're needing repaired? So I think it's a big issue. It's not something that is just a set of numbers. This is actually quite important for a lot of the communities, because people do go around the cemeteries, and they do bring flowers to their relatives and to others. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Nicola?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have a programme in place for trying to contact family members when a headstone is deemed as being unsafe. Our first port of call is our own records that we've got for when headstones were erected in the first place, or from the owners of the layers. We have, I can't speak specifically for Ward 7, but I can say that we have contacted other community councils to see if there's local knowledge. And that's part of our programme for trying to find out as much as we can in the local area if there's family members present. Regarding the different sizes of headstones that have been, do you mean they've been staked and banded, like bound up to keep them upright, or just got a tag on them, just saying they're unsafe?
They've got a tag on them saying they're unsafe, and there doesn't seem to be a logic to, from my point of view, there doesn't seem to be a logic to which stones are actually unsafe.
There often isn't. Sometimes you can find a stone that is actually physically leaning in a cemetery, and it looks as if it's unsafe, but it actually is completely secure. And there's others that are standing there perfect, you know, perpendicular, and if you touch them, they would move. So it's quite strange. It is different in each location. Each stone is different. They are supposed to be careful with and secure any stones that are particularly wobbly if they're above a certain size, just to make sure until such times as they're repaired properly that there's not going to be any further accidents with the stones. I can certainly take that up with the contractor just to get a further clarification on exactly what is being tagged and what isn't, and I can feed that back to members for that assurance, if that would be helpful.
I think it would, but I think also involving the community councils, because a lot of the cemeteries are active, and whether or not the person has died, an individual has died 10 years ago or 50 years ago, and certainly in the case where we've got quite a few cemeteries where there are ex-service personnel being brought back to the region, so they've been interred, and they are visited quite frequently by members. And I think it would be useful to give out some sort of information to the community council so that they themselves can, you know, find out if they have any questions to ask you, then they should be able to ask you.
Absolutely, yes, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Councillor Hislop.
It's on page 66, 4510, the garden waste collection service. Just wondering if we have achieved the sort of targets with regard to customers who actually want to take up this option, and if someone could remind me where I could find out which dates they come round our area, because I've lost my bit of paper or wherever it was.
Thank you, Nicola. Can you take that forward?
Yes, unfortunately I'm not aware of what the original target was, but I can give you an update on the position we find ourselves in with the garden waste collection service currently. So up to date, 4,000 households have signed up to the scheme. And to give you a bit of a breakdown for with Nithsdale wards, Nith Ward 379 households, Abbey Ward 361, North West Dumfries 317, Mid and Upper Nithsdale 191, and Locker Ward 412. People have signed up to the scheme, so it's fairly good uptake, and collections are starting very shortly. If you want to contact me offline to let me know your address, I can certainly find out exactly when your collection will be for you. But a good tip is always keep an eye on what your neighbours are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heslop. Thank you, Nicola. Do we have any further comments? Councillor Campbell.
Just a comment, just on the back of what Councillor Hislop was saying there about the garden waste. My bin was getting collected today. It was presented last night and it was full. You wouldn't think at this time of year that garden waste could be quite substantial, so I'm looking forward to this, and I would encourage anybody who wishes to take up this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 65. It's 4.52. It's regarding headstones and repairs. It's just the fact that some families actually pay insurance now. They pay insurance so that when something goes wrong with the headstone, or it's checked maybe on an annual basis, maybe that's something, maybe that could maybe be more looked into. Is it a possibility? The other one was on page 65, 4.54. It's regarding this battery collection and how well is it actually going, because I haven't seen many bags about it at all. I just wonder how successful it's been in its operation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Nicola, on the battery collection scheme, do you have any figures on that or any update? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can advise members that since September, 2.9 tonnes of batteries have been collected via this scheme, which I think is a fair old pile. And there's a more interesting statistic as well, is that batteries can cause what we call activations at the MBT plant. That's where batteries overheat and cause a hot spot, or they actually cause a small fire. And obviously that has to be attended to. So since the inception of this scheme, there's been a 40% reduction in activations at the MBT plant, as well as a result of batteries being taken out of the general waste stream. So we're counting that as a bit of a success story at the moment.
Thank you, Nicola.
Yes, thank you very much for that. It looks very good, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? If not, we will move to recommendations. Members are asked to review 2.1, consider 2.2, and consider 2.3. And thank you, Nicola and Jennifer, for your attendance. Thank you. Do we have note, and consider? Thank you. We'll now move to item 7. We now have the Transport and Infrastructure Service Plan for 24 to 25. This report goes from the 1st of April to the 31st of December 24. The report states that there are no performance measures specific to the Nithsdale area, and that any comments or requests from this meeting will be taken back to Economy and Infrastructure Committee for consideration. Having said that, there is some useful local information on the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit schemes. And we have Tony Topping in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do we have any comments or questions on the 20-mile-per-hour scheme or any other? Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report. I'll not mention the specific roads, or maybe I could mention the specific roads, but the 20 mile an hour speed limits are welcomed, both in Heathrow and Locher Briggs. But when you have a straight, long road, very often the 20 mile an hour limits aren't adhered to. I've had a number of complaints from constituents in both Heathrow and Locher Briggs about people using, taking advantage of the fact that there's a long straight road with very few obstacles in it, which is good. You don't want obstacles in a road. But I understand the the objectives behind a 20 mile an hour speed limit for these areas, but how do we enforce that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. Yes, enforcement is always a big issue with regards to 20 mile an hour speed limits, and as you know, enforcement does lie with Police Scotland. However, we do work with them, and once a scheme is implemented, like we've done just recently in Lockerbie and Annan, we'll then obviously do the follow-up surveys to check levels of compliance, to see if the mean speeds have come down, and if they're not coming down, we can take two approaches. One is to look at additional signage or infrastructure, vehicle-activated flashing signs, and if it is specific areas, we can then work with Police Scotland, and they can look at tactical options. If they know it's certain times, if it's like a Friday night, they know there's higher rates, then they can target it. So yeah, we will try and iron out any specific areas when we do the initial surveys to address that, but as I say, enforcement is ultimately a Police Scotland issue, but we do work closely with them in addressing these things. You'll also notice in the report for Lockerbriggs and Heath Hall at the moment, the majority of Heath Hall is 20 mile an hour. Lockerbriggs is still to get their 20 mile an hour. The whole scheme's been sort of put on hold because Transport Scotland are looking at the A701, which obviously runs through the middle of Heath Hall and Lockerbriggs. We had hoped to get it in place by the end of this month, but obviously you're aware there's a lot of work on the 701 at the moment at the small Tesco's roundabout, so that's sort of delaying things. So hopefully we'll have our scheme in place probably in April now.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm just wondering how long a programme is from when consultation starts with the community and then to implementation, because on page 77 it's implement, but we've only really just started consultation in Dalbeattie, and yet it says date June, March 25. When are we likely to see actually something up and running if we're just consulting at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Tony?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. With regards to the whole process, yes, we do consult initially with ward members, with the Community Council, with Police Scotland, before we move on to do the detailed design work. So with the likes of Dalbeattie and Castle Douglas, the next stage is that we will be going out to consult with the Community Councils and the ward members. I think some of you have been through this process already. We've done a few other areas in the area, and you know that we like to do that initial consultations first before we get on with the detailed design, just to make sure everybody's on board, that we're quite open and transparent on how we are going about it, and that we do take your views as the elected representatives of the people of the wards. So for Dalbeattie and Castle Douglas, they're top of the list for moving into the spring this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Do we have any further comments or questions? Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, I'm looking at page 77, which has got a list of a number of areas. I'm just wondering, are these the priority areas to get 20? I'm fully aware that we've got a report later on, although it's not for 20, but it is for a reduction in speed down to 30. I'm just wondering the resources there to continue with the 20 programme as opposed to trying to look at other areas at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Tony, can you answer that one? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Yes, the other places there that are mentioned, they come from back in, it was December 2021, there was a report on 20 mile an hour speed limits, and we had a priority list based on population size, and that was agreed at the Communities Committee back in December 2021. So after Lockerbriggs and Heath Hall, we're looking at Dalbeattie, Castle Douglas, Newton Stewart and Minnigaff and Gretna. However, now that we've finished the schools programme, there was another, within that report, we did say we were going to look at the rest of Dumfries. So as you're aware, Dumfries Town Centre has a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, but we are now going to do a scheme to look at the rest of Dumfries. So to look at all your residential areas, your Georgetowns, your Calsides, up in Lochside as well, all these other areas to be considered where there's thousands of people live, they work, they go to school, they go to shops. If we can do a whole blanket for the Dumfries area, that'll be done in conjunction with these other towns that we're working our way through.
Thank you. Councillor Slater?
Yes, I would just like to ask the question of these areas going to 20. Is there any consultation with the public? Because it's questionable if that should go to every area, because areas are different as such, and some roads are different as well, some are narrower, some are wider. So will there be consultation with local residents? I think that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Councillor Slater. Yes, in accordance with there's a national strategy from Transport Scotland on 20-mile-an-hours, and there's set criteria on what roads and streets can become 20 miles an hour. So for some of the other towns we've been doing, for instance, Lockerbie, Dalbeattie, Castle Douglas, we have in the first instance been consulting with just the ward members, the community councils and the police, because we've been using temporary traffic regulation orders. However, for the Dumfries scheme, we are planning to do a series of consultations, and where we'll do some events throughout the whole of Dumfries just to get public feedback, because it is such a large area, so many people will be affected by it. So we are taking a slightly different approach for Dumfries due to the size, the nature. You've got a mixture of strategic roads that come in to Dumfries as well as all the residential roads. So yes, we will be doing some engagement.
Thank you. It's good to hear there's going to be engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? No further comments. We'll now move to recommendations. Thank you, Tony, for your attendance here. Thank you. 2.1, we're asked to review. 2.2, consider. And 2.3, consider. We all have reviewed and considered. Thank you. Move on to item 8. We now have the Economy and Environment in Service Plan for 2024 to 25 report. This, again, a detailed report with a great deal of information specific to our area. It is reassuring to see that all the performance measures for our area are on track, and that none of the project's performance is outside acceptable limits. It is encouraging to read the update on the local place plans and to learn that 12 are currently progressing. Jamie Little is in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do we have any? Councillor State.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a comment on pages 86, 87 regarding the housing programme. I see 2 or 3 of them are dependent on funding. Is there any update, Tony, on any of them, if funding's been found for any of them schemes? Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stitt. So in terms of funding for a lot of the developments, the Scottish Government budget for 25-26 has returned to the previous Affordable Housing Supply Programme commitments that were made. There had been a reduction during 24-25 of around £5 million for Dumfries and Galloway. We haven't had our specific allocation sent out to us as yet. We will advise members of that, hopefully at the 15th of April Economy and Infrastructure Committee. But we are aware that the full national budget has been put back in place now.
Thanks, Jamie.
Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on page 87, on the College Mains and College Road, I mean, that's quite a substantial amount of housing. You might not be able to answer this question, actually, Jamie, but, you know, just to kind of show why place plans are really important. There's already housing on the site. There's then more housing potentially. And there's actually no bus route around there. So, you know, we're building huge big estates, but there's no bus route around it. And I do know that some members in Sandside have been very keen to do a place plan, but they don't actually have a community council. So just to tie in with that, what are we doing to support these groups? Because that's really important. And just on the subject of the College Road, I would like to see some funding being put into that, because I've had quite a bit of contact over my time as a councillor for people looking for housing, you know, specifically that type of housing that they're looking to build in there. So I would like to see that progressed, hopefully in that area as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Jamie, do you have any comments to make on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. So in terms of Sandside community looking at potentially developing a local place plan, there are services within the council, within our economy and environment, who would be more than happy to assist and guide them with that process. So if they are looking to make contact, we'd certainly suggest they raise that with officers. In terms of the College Road development, you know, this has been a really tricky project to try and progress for a number of different reasons. The site itself is now potentially suffering from additional flooding risk under National Planning Framework 4, just a new designation. The Adult Health and Social Care Partnership, as we've mentioned in the report, have identified this as a critical project for them that they're really keen to try and develop. And we are now actively looking at are we needing to look at this provision elsewhere within Dumfries. One of the key benefits of College Road that we would like to really continue to have in place with any new site identification is that we see that there's potential for a good staff base for care and support that could be provided in and around the Sandside area. So we are looking at opportunities through the Lochside regeneration proposal right now.
Thank you. Does that answer Councillor Stevenson? Thank you. Councillor Beretti?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Jamie. In relation to page 81, the development LPP, nice to see that Kellerholm is being used here as a bit of an example, and it does sort of go into my question in that, have you noticed any change in the preparation, or let's say the intensity, since the community council elections? Because clearly a lot of these LPPs need to have stability and need to have people driving them. And I've noticed that, say, for instance, from the Pen Punt, which has been driven quite successfully by some of the community there and the community council, along with the KPT. Have you noticed anything that might be a flag to say, right, okay, you need to support some of these other communities? Jamie.
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Jamie?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Beretti. So I'm not directly linked into the place plans. I tend to be supporting other officers in terms of any housing matters that do come up. But in reference to Kirkconnell and Kellerholm and the work that's been done there around the Borderlands place plan development, that work is still progressing, and there is support going in from our economic development colleagues to try to achieve some of those projects. I'm happy to take that query away and come back with a fuller response and engagement with colleagues across the service.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson, did you want to come back in? No. Any further questions? Councillor Johnston, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 85. It's the Borderlands Natural Capital Programme, 4.5.11.2. My understanding of this is it mentions at the start it was a 5-year programme. Well, initially it was an 8-year programme, but there's been that many delays. It's now a 5-year programme. My understanding, as well as the Borderlands grant offer, needs to be reapproved due to delays, but the project needs to start on April 25, or we are at risk of losing the funding. So can someone give us an update on whether this approval is taking place.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Jamie?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Johnson. That is one I will need to take away, and I'll speak to the Environment team. I'll catch up with Simon Fieldhouse and get a response to you as soon as possible after this meeting.
Thank you. We'll wait for that response. Councillor Hislop?
Page 84, the 4.5.4. Will our area committee receive a report on activity of the Dumfries Town Board in the past year, and at the appropriate time when we get further guidance on the government's expectations, will we get an update at future meetings as well as to where they're aiming to go and what they plan to do?
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. I don't see why we can't have a report brought back to this committee on the town board. So we can probably do that. Yeah, we can get that put in place.
Thank you.
Councillor Dempster, did you want to speak?
No, just to say that if there is information being shared with Jamie and Malcolm, could every member of the Nithsdale Area Committee have the same information to hand?
Thank you. Do we have any? Councillor Little?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Jamie. It's on page 88, the Thistle Grove Gypsy Traveller site. On 4.5, 14.1, it says a number of physical improvements have been made to the pitches and facilities provided to ensure that the site is safe to occupy. Are these improvements that the council has identified or improvements that the site occupiers requested? Because I know there was one or two things that they felt would improve their lives there in the interim until such times. You might not be able to answer that though, I suppose. Do you know what kind of improvements have been, Jamie? Sorry.
Thanks. Councillor Little, that is one that I can hopefully answer. So the Thistle Grove site improvements have been done in consultation with local residents. There are a number of matters. Obviously, the site, as we've set out, is failing to meet the minimum site standards as published by the Scottish Government at this time. But there have been a number of improvements that have been made, and it's been really important to ourselves and the officers working directly on the site that they make sure that those are aligned with the wishes of the residents. One of the particular changes that's been made is that all the pitches now have fences around them, which assists in terms of ensuring safety of the children that live on the site, but also there's for having there's a lot of dogs on the site as well, so making sure that they're contained and kept secure within the area. So all of the improvements that we've been able to make to date have definitely been in consultation with local residents, and a key part of the work going forward is that consultation which is ongoing. We've brought in a specialist organisation who are called MECOP, who specifically work in consultation with people from ethnic minorities and disadvantaged backgrounds to ensure that their voices can be heard in terms of the development going forward.
No, thanks for that, and I am so super excited to hear that the fencing gone up. The four Locher Ward members spoke to the residents, and that was the main thing, and that seemed to take such a long time. Procurement seemed to be an issue, but I'm really so excited and glad that that's happened, because that was the main thing that they wanted. So thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Councillor Little. Councillor Slater?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This ground is peat ground. It's obviously would be difficult to build on, and is it probably better maybe to have a site somewhere else rather than trying to build on the peat, which could probably continue to sink? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. I think there's tests being done at the moment on the ground. Jamie, do you have any further follow-up on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Slater. So the decision taken by full council back in December 23 was to redevelop on the Thistle Grove site. There had been a structural survey of the ground conditions undertaken at that point, and that was highlighted to members as one of the challenges of reprovision at the Thistle Grove site. However, members did choose to go with that option, and that is the work that we're currently progressing.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? Don't appear to have. We'll move to recommendations. Thank you, Jamie, for your attendance. Thank you. Members are asked to 2.1 review, 2.2 consider, and 2.3 consider. Do we have reviewed and considered? Thank you. Move on to item 9. Our final 6-month report, performance report, is from Thriving Communities. Members will again be pleased to see the amount of detail disaggregated to Wigtown area level contained in this report. It is good to see young people continue to achieve accreditation for their achievements beyond the school gates and the detail of the achievements of our lifelong learners. It's good also to see the figures detailed to physical activity remaining high and in some cases increasing. Annie Johnston is in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do we have any member comments or questions? Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Robert. Just a housekeeping matter in page 97, 4.5.3. Former Sanker Library and land at Gustavs is in Ward 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Do we have any further? Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. The reference to 4.5.4 Community Council elections is a comment, not a question. It's just to put a big thank you out to the ward officers who did so much work helping community councils. I want that on record. They did a massive amount of work to ensure these elections went smoothly. So certainly from our group, a big thanks to them for doing that in the Nithsdale area. And it's really good to see another comment that attendances are increasing across Nithsdale in our swimming pools, which is really good because we want to get as many young people as possible. Maybe it's not all young people, because I certainly use it as well, but we want to get as many young people as possible learning how to swim. Are we looking at this increasing or staying the same, or what's the sort of projections on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Annie, can you help out? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dorward. In terms of swimming lessons, we do have quite a significant waiting list of young people. There are a few reasons for that, excuse me. Some of them being a backlog from, I hate to say the word, COVID, but also there are some changes in terms of alternative offerings that were available. For example, the Cairndale no longer offers swimming lessons. We are trying to increase the number of swimming teachers that we have. However, the swimming teacher training is a national course, so we're putting somebody through that training locally in hopes that we will then be able to deliver or train our own swimming teachers, if you like, and then increase the number of lessons that are available. So hopefully we will see an increase in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments, questions? We don't appear to have, so we'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to 2.1 review the 2024-25 performance, 2.2 consider, and 2.3 consider. And thank you, Annie, for your attendance. Thank you. Reviewed and considered. Thank you. We'll move on to item 10. Our next item is the annual Nithsdale Area Committee Discretionary Budget Report 24-25. The report by the head of Thriving Communities. Members will be pleased to see that once again the investment of this fund in key local and community initiatives has directly benefited more than 28,000 citizens this past year and helped protect 14 community centres and village halls with support for their increased utility bills. Members will note that due to the timing of the Nithsdale sports grant allocations based on the two separate funding rounds, Some monitoring information is not yet due and will be reported to a future committee. But it is great to see how this fund is supporting our athletes and sporting organisations to achieve their sporting goals. Members will also note that officers recommend a short extension to the Heston Rovers Football Club, who have completed the capital investment works project at St Joseph's. However, a key part of the grant conditions was a finalised service level agreement with our council, and this extension to the 18th of April would allow this to be concluded. We have Derek Hextall is available on Teams to answer any questions, and I will open up for member discussion. Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Derek. I think you probably know what I'm going to be bringing up. The GIFORN, the twinning, the celebrations, the anniversary celebrations. This was a motion, as you know, for an there was a motion, as you know, for an uplift to funding to enable, what do I put here? A one-off uplift twinning budget to help facilitate the welcome of German guests to celebrate the anniversary and enable Doonhamers to visit our twinned friends in GIFORN to participate in their commemorations. Doonhamers. I remember specifically saying that this money was not to be spent on members. This public money was not to be spent on members. And I see on page 131 in August that the council convener and ward officer was sent to plant trees. So, yeah, really disappointed. Actually, no, I'm not disappointed. I'm really fuming because this money is very, very clear when I did the motion that this money was not to be spent on members. I have actually done a EMES. I know this is not you, Derek. I'm really sorry. I'm not having a go at you. You're the monitor of this report. Whoever made the decisions is behind all that. I've sent in an EMES to ask for full costing of all events and trips. This money should never have gone to members. Should not have been about sending members over there. I was very specific on that, and I'm really disappointed. And yeah, I just wanted to make that comment. I've not had the information back yet. I'm supposed to get the EMES information back by Friday, so I look forward to seeing what that is. But if we're doing an uplift to help facilitate our communities and organisations, and that uplift goes to members, it's not acceptable. But as I said, this is not about you, Derek. I know you're the monitor of this. You did not make these decisions, so I apologise, but I don't apologise for being fuming.
Thank you, Councillor Little. Do you have anything to add to that, Derek? I think that the invite was from the Burgermeister for the convener, the leaders to attend, but
Can I come back in? No.
Yes, of course.
I was invited. I was the provost for 6 years and was invited to go over to GIFORN for many, many times, and it did not sit well with me to use funding, public funds, to do that when we were scratching to try and keep services going now. So we are using public money when we should have thought it doesn't look well, and I'm not accepting that.
Thank you, Councillor Little. Derek, do you have anything to add?
Good afternoon, members. Thanks for the question, Councillor Little. I don't have further the detail that you're looking for included within the monitoring report that's been provided by the lead officer. I understand you've submitted an EMES you mentioned there, so you should get a bit. If other members of the committee are looking for that breakdown, then certainly as part of my monitoring role, I'm happy to seek further clarity from the lead applicant around a fuller breakdown. What has been provided in the monitoring form is the costs associated with the area committee grant specifically, so the £4,446. So that might not include the total cost, which I think Councillor Little is asking for. It is just detailing the costs associated with the 4,446 from area committee. So there might be additional costs there. So I would like to detail them if that's not what the members are looking for. But if members are wanting further detail from a monitoring perspective of this grant, then I'm happy to go back and seek that from the service. But Councillor Little's right, I don't have that to hand within this monitoring information that I've got, Chair.
Thank you, Derek. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. Just a couple of things to touch on. On page 119, it talks about the Christmas lights for Sanker, Kirkconnell, Kilholm and Thornhill. And the second last paragraph, it became issues of several lights not illuminating due to weather ingress. The whole thing was really unfortunate because we never had a time when all of the lights in these communities were working properly. And I spent, well, Derek will know, I spent a long time exchanging emails with Derek. So if it's something that we are going to continue, and I know that's not for today, or maybe it is for today, but we need to have a system that's operational, and there is an explanation about the time scale in securing new contractual arrangements. But if we're going to do that, it has to be right or not at all, because what should be a good news story simply finished up with being criticised for no managing a simple exercise in illuminating, well, motifs and Christmas lights. That's the first observation. The second one is about on page 120, there were assets purchased, new lights available for use across Nithsdale. Hope that is the case and they're not just confined to one locality. If we're doing the Christmas motifs, there might be an opportunity for children to design and have the new motifs fitted, and then they take ownership, if you like, of that. But that's all dependent upon the decision we make at another time. I'll just put that in for your observations. And the last thing is, well, second last thing is floral planting. Maybe it's time we went across the region. Kirkconnell and Kilholm, right up Sanker Group, win awards every year, but we never seem to give them any plants, although there are plenty produced. And the last question is on page 126, N4.18, it's Solway Skating Club. There's a significant number of young people that get awards here and obviously qualify, which is great, but then we're duplicating awards because that's what we try not to do. In other words, young people are getting awards individually. Should the skating club be getting awards as well? And that might be for something in this deal, Sports Council to deal with rather than here today. But it's an observation again that we try to make sure that only one applicant gets one element of payment. But maybe more observations than anything else, Provost. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster, for those observations. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. It's maybe not for this paper, but it's certainly been highlighted in this paper. Councillor Dempster's just picked up on one part of it as well. When we say the Christmas light switch on, the Christmas lights in general, not just the light switch on, and the new ones that were used, it's on page 120, they've been used at Greyfriars, county buildings, Queensbury Square, which is all pretty much town centre, and then Georgetown Library. Why does Georgetown Library get them and nowhere in North West Dumfries? Do you know why do we not put lights on up there if you're putting them at Georgetown Library? It seems a bit unfair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Yes, Derek, do you have any answers to why they don't get lights when Georgetown Library does?
Thanks, Councillor Stephen. My understanding is that that particular allocation on page 120, so N202 to the assets team, are specifically to replace lights that were already in existence on council facilities, so in council facilities. Now, I understand the premise of your question there, and Councillor Dempster mentioned it previously. My understanding is that the replacement lights there are available for other council civic buildings to use, so they're not part of the Christmas lights that are delivered by the roads department. The community assets team look after the civic building lights, and these were to replace outdated lights. My understanding of the Georgetown Library one was that there is still a Christmas tree that is funded by our council, which I think is a historic arrangement when there was a community council in Georgetown that used to purchase the lights. When the community council in Georgetown disbanded, then the funding from Georgetown Community Council came to the council, and I think the council continued with that paying for the Christmas tree with the funding that was available. and that included the Christmas lights around the Christmas tree. So I think they have come to the end of their usable life, and so this funding allowed those lights to be replaced. However, my understanding is that those lights are a Nithsdale resource, not specific. They won't necessarily be in these locations going forward.
Thank you, Derek. Does that help, Councillor Stevenson?
It certainly does. I think my next campaign will be get stuff in our ward that belongs to the council. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment there. Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, just a comment on page 112 about Heston Rovers. I'm pleased to see that the project is now completed, and I welcome that this committee should give them a short extension so that we can get some feedback back. So just a comment. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Provost. It's just an observation and a question based on Councillor Dempsey and Councillor Stevens' comments about the lights. I'm not going to assume, but I would hope that the lights that are being replaced are replacing tungsten lights or halogen lights that are very power and energy hungry and are being replaced with LEDs. Now, if this is the case, is there a record of what the energy savings are likely to be with the replacement of these lights? Because effectively, by replacing lights, old ones for new ones, you're also almost in a spend to save syndrome, where over periods of hours and hours and days, the previous lights would have cost quite a bit to keep them lit, and the new ones will be a lot cheaper to run. Has that been done, Derek?
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Derek?
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. Councillor Beretti, I'm not aware of that detail. It's not something we've received in the monitoring report, but I'm happy to seek some further clarity from the lead officers, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think it would be, because all of these things feed into our net zero policy as a council and as a region. So that would be a nice little bit of information to have at hand, certainly if we're going forward and we're looking at things on the climate group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. One thing I forgot to mention, and it's in the response to all of these feedbacks that we get from recipients that receive funding, the challenges that they are facing. And one of the challenges that a lot of these community groups are facing now is the fact that police are refusing to manage traffic and help make these events safe. And I do think as a council we should be calling on the police to reconsider that particular approach. I can understand sometimes that they're busy, but these are important events in the community, and it's important that no one is placed at risk because the police decide they don't want to bother doing such a thing anymore. So I wonder if members would consider making representation either through Derek or formally some other committees that we request the police reconsider and that they do support what are community events, and it's important their presence is seen. After all, they are, in inverted commas, public servants, the same as us. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Derek, do you have any comments on that?
I would suggest probably through the chair would be better than through myself, Councillor Dempster, on behalf of the committee to highlight that, but it has been raised by several local organisations and certainly colleagues across our council, concerns around the approach that Police Scotland appear to be taking nationally around supporting our galas, riding the marches, etc., and community events. So probably best through the chair, Councillor Dempster, if that's more appropriate.
Thank you, Derek. We can take that forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. If members are happy with that, it's a suggestion that members have to support or agree with.
Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I hope it's appropriate for this meeting, but last week we managed to get a walk around the town with our CEO, Don Roberts, and we visited the food place at the station to see how good what they're doing for the community. We also visited St Joseph's College, and it was nice to see the kids with all the medals. And some of these kids get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go swimming before they even do their lessons. And also we visited the mid-steeple quarter. We weren't allowed at the flats, but we had a look around the building. It was just for information, that was all. But it was a good day, and it was amazing how much food that those people have put out. And some of the big shops in the town support them as well. I was amazed how many tons of food a year they actually give away. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Yeah, there's a lot of good things happening that we don't always know about. Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thanks, Chair. It was actually just to support Jim, but I think we've all supported him as a committee. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? If not, we'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to 2.1, note 2.1, 2.2, note 2.3, note, and 2.4, agree to carry forward any underspend of the discretionary budget 25-26 as detailed in paragraph 4.13. That be noted and agreed.
Provost, can you add that members agree to communicate with the police, because that way it'll be recorded that that's what we've asked you to do.
Yes,
please.
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
Can we have that recorded, Tracy? Thank you.
Sure, I did have that recorded as an operational action, but if members would rather have it in the minute, an action. Okay.
Happy with an action, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dempster. I don't know, we stop for lunch, do you think? Are we happy to continue, or would you like to stop? Continue. Perfect. Thank you. Now move on to item 11. Item 11. Our next report asks us to identify any groups not already identified and engaged regarding the disposal of land at Kirkbean Primary School. We have Colin Freeman on Teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. If we just... I would just like to make a comment before we do go forward with this one. Kirkbean Primary School is in mothball, so that way it's temporarily closed at the moment, and it hasn't gone to really at the moment. It's just, are we willing to sell off bits of land when it hasn't actually, the school hasn't actually been closed. It hasn't gone to its statutory consultation as yet. So is this a premature selling of land, just before we go to any comments or questions? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Yeah, that was one of the questions we were going to raise, because we've got a mothball policy that needs to be considered, first of all, before we can deem this, surplus. So that was one of my questions. And the other question really on the appendix is, when you look at page 141, the area to be declared surplus is highlighted. And when you go to page 143, the small section in the corner actually takes in some of the area to be retained because of the way they've got that angle straightened off. A couple of queries on that, but I think with the mothballing policy, should we really be considering this? I'm not sure, but I'll leave it to others to come in as well.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Do you have any help with that, Colin?
Thank you, Provost. Yes, the land in question was declared surplus in 2015 by the Education Committee, and at that point they understood that it would not impact on the school itself. The land is heavily wooded, it's not used by the school at all, and is actually fenced off from the main school plot.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. Colin Freeman has just partly said what I was going to, is that it was declared surplus in 2015 and it has not been used by the school. One thing that I noticed about it, it's not a level piece of land and it's wooded, so I presume the interest is from someone who wants to add it onto their garden, because there's no access to it from the A710, which is 40 miles an hour at that point. The only real access is either from the school or presumably from a property that bounds it. I've got no issue with this as such, but if anybody wants to do anything in the future, it's not a really developable bit of land, so I hope it might be retained by new owners for as a buffer, because it protects quite a lot of the village from the sound of the road.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Colin?
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. The interested party is actually a trained tree surgeon and is interested in conserving the area of land in terms of the nature and the wildlife in that land. So I think he's got the best of intent. The interested party has got the best of intentions for that piece of land.
Thank you. Councillor
Sorry,
Slate. Councillor Lowe, did you want to come back in?
Sorry, if I could. So from the sound of it, it's going to be a saving for the council, because otherwise we would have to manage the trees, and somebody with the skills is willing to take that on, but to retain the actual nature of what is on there.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Colin, did you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Provost. Exactly that, Councillor Lowe. The interested party will take on and maintain that land, and when we go into negotiation with them in terms of what the financial agreement will be, we'll take into account any capital receipt that we'll generate, but also any future liabilities and revenue costs that would be associated with that land.
Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Yes, Chair. Regarding tree surgeons, they tend to cut down trees. I just wonder if the trees will be cut down. Also, the fact is, if it stays as one piece of land like that, and eventually it is sold, it will be more profitable probably to sell the land off with the extra land on it, rather than take that and start cutting into small parts of it now. It would be better kept at a later stage. If the school does eventually close as such, then that land will be worth more to the council because of that extra area on it. That's my opinion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Colin, do you have any comments to make on that?
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Slater. The land itself is not developable. It's heavily wooded, and the interested party has made it very clear to officers that they're interested in maintaining the trees and not felling the trees. If they were to look to fell the trees, then there would be a consultation process undertaken because it's general best practice not to fell generally healthy trees.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. The issue with the trees is we cannot place a tree preservation order on these trees, especially if they don't have any aesthetic value. Therefore, the future of the trees and the landscaping is in a third-party ownership, something we can't condition. So therefore, there is an issue, and of course, we try and retain as many trees as we can because of the environment and biodiversity. So it's really a judgment for members. We're not deciding today. We're only consultees. It's somebody else that will decide. But I do think we should give this some serious thought. And my other thought is, anyone looking to buy the school, if we eventually put it up for auction, may want the whole parcel of land and not have some of it hived off before it becomes a block sale, and then be up to the new owner to negotiate with anyone that's interested at that time. So I have concerns, but we're not asked to do that. We're simply asked to establish whether or not there are any other consultees, and that will be for local members to offer these observations, no me.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks. I'll just reiterate, it says in paragraph 3, when it's Colin says this is deemed surplus on 10th of July 2015, and I would recommend we go on with the recommendations in the paper.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. Councillor Hislop.
Question for Mr Freeman. Does it usually take 9.5 years to bring a request from the public to this stage, where it says that it was following the request from the member of public who's interested in it? Back in 2015, we actually agreed it was surplus. Is that normal? It's just that I have a chap in the village who's looking for a piece of ground to be declared surplus, so I can go back to him and tell him it might be another 6 or 7 years before he hears any more about it.
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. Colin?
Thank you, Provost. Thank you for the question, Councillor Hislop. As I understand it, this is a historical case, and the original interested party that interested was not taken forward at that time. The new interested party has only moved to Kirkbean a couple of years ago and is now interested in that land. And for your final point, Councillor Hislop, I'm happy to give you an update offline.
Thank you, Colin. Do we have any further questions or comments to make? I still feel that as it's under mothballing process, Kirkbean School, this is something we have to take into consideration as well. And thank you. If there are no further comments or recommendations, we'll move to recommendations. Yes, Colin, did you want? Oh, Councillor Lowe, sorry, I didn't see you there.
I was just going to second Councillor Stitt's proposal that we go with what's in this paper at this point in time and allow this to proceed.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. No further. Councillor Slater.
You made a proposal to keep it as one block at the moment because of the mothballing.
Stevenson, I don't think we had a proposal or a motion or anything on the table. Councillor Stevenson?
No, I think some of this might help. So we agreed that, well, we didn't agree because I wasn't a councillor then, but it was agreed in 2015 that this was surplus land. When was the school actually mothballed? Because I don't think it's two in the same. I think this is a bit of land that's been deemed surplus and has nothing to do with the school whatsoever anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Tracy, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If I can draw members' attention to paragraph 3.1, where it was agreed at Education Committee in 2015. So the role of the area committee today is only asking you to identify any groups as part of the consultation process. We can't now say that we're not declaring this land as surplus to requirement because that decision has already been made. It's only for members today to, as part of the consultation process, to engage with any other groups. That's the role of members today. Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy, for making that clear.
No, Chair, if I may, I did pick up on the point the area in question actually encroaches on what area was to be retained. So we didn't really agree that tiny little corner in the bottom. So I'm looking for governance advice because there is a difference between what was agreed in 2015 and what's being proposed on page 143. It takes in some of what was meant to be retained. I'm looking for governance advice, but I think on balance, I think we should just agree the recommendations, but if I can just get a wee bit of clarity on that tiny little bit that's meant to be retained from 2015. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Tracy, do we have any?
Sorry, Sorry, Colin, could you just clarify if there is any encroachment onto the retained section? I know there's the plans that are attached in the appendices are different scales, so you might be able to help further. Is it what was agreed at education, or is it any different than what was agreed in 2015?
Thank you, Provost. Tracy and Councillor Campbell, we'll revisit the plans to make sure that what's in focus is actually within what was declared surplus at committee in 2015, because we can only dispose of what has been declared surplus. So when it gets to the point of actually selling that land, all the plans will be double checked. They'll all be on the same scale, and we'll ensure that we're only disposing of land that has been declared surplus, and that will be made clear to the interested party as well.
I'm content with that response, Provost. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. I think we're flogging a dead horse. If you look at page 141, it tells you in there what the area already declared surplus is. That's in 2.1 in your recommendations. 2.2 shows the smaller area that Colin has advised us an interest in. 2.3 tells us note the local community groups, and we're only asked to identify any other groups not already identified and engaged with. And that's our duty, and that's I think what David Stitt and Paul are saying. Go with the recommendations, let the relevant committee deal with the semantics of the thing.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. If there are no further comments or questions, we'll move to the recommendations. Members are asked to note 2.1, note 2.2, note 2.3 and 2.4. Thank you.
So
Well, now move-
sorry, Chair. So we're
Yes, Tracy.
at 2.4, so there's no other groups to be identified by members.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 12. Our final report today asks that we consider a traffic regulation order in Georgetown. Tony Topping is in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do we have member comments?
Thank you, Ryan. Here's keeping me right. It's really as a ward member, we've all had representations made to us about this proposal going forward, and that in December we made a request, or a tentative request was made to have a ward event around this issue so that we could actually consult better with the local residents. So I would like to propose that we postpone making this decision until such a ward event has actually taken place.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Yes, Councillor Slater? Microphone, please.
People are asking for a ward event, and I support the councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Do we have any further comments, Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Reading the report on page 146, 3.5, where it says that Communities Committee on the 2nd of April in the Public Realm Capital Programme in the appendix mentions about the quiet route or quiet lane, which this report's meant to incorporate. But when I look back at the Appendix 2, it actually only mentioned Craigs Road East as a quiet route, and yet we're being asked to consider not only the Craigs Road, but also the U108, Georgetown Road, and the U110, which is a link road. So those weren't actually considered back in the Communities Committee as quiet routes. It was only the Craigs Road that was considered. So I'm a wee bit concerned that we've been given information here on other roads over and above the Craigs Road. The other thing I wanted just to sort of pick up on was On page 168, there's reference there about 20 speed limits, although this particular report's for a 30 reduction from 60 to 30. It's just after the bullet points. It says here, with regards to the proposed quiet route, whilst we have advertised this for a 30-mile speed limit, based on place criteria above and the rural nature of these roads, this route is currently not deemed appropriate for a 20 mile per hour. But is that forever? Or would that have to come back if it's deemed that it's going from 30 to 20? So a wee bit of clarification on those 2 points, if I may. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Tony, do you want to answer that? And then we'll...
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for your questions, Councillor. So the first part, yes, there was an item in the Public Realm Capital Programme last year under the active travel, and it was just, I think, given at the time the heading Craigs Road East, Dumfries for the quiet route. Yeah, we probably should have put in the other roads that formed that as well. With regards to the 20, we're basing that statement on the current guidance that we've received from Transport Scotland. Now, who's to say that guidance might change in 5 or 10 years' time? But at the moment, because it's a country lane, there's no footways, there's no street lighting, it's not a built-up area. There's nothing there to suggest it could be a 20. We'll be focusing on areas, the residential streets near schools, near shops, near libraries, etc. for 20s. So, just to point out as well, I wasn't aware of any ward event request, and also we've had quite a few. There was actually an article in the Courier on Friday about this scheme in the paper today, and since then we'd actually received quite a few emails in favour of the scheme from residents of Georgetown. So I think if we were going to do an event, yes, we'll have to do the Georgetown Village and all the local residents and get their views and opinions on it.
Thank you, Tony. We actually have a proposal here from Councillor Johnston that's seconded by Councillor Slater to postpone this for further public consultation. Do we have any comments on that? Do we have? Yes, Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I've no issues in principle with the quiet road process, but I do think, this is in support of Councillor Johnston and Councillor Slater, it's absolutely essential to let local democracy work, and a ward meeting is an intrinsic part of that, however big or small it might be. If the request got lost in transit, then it's certainly not lost now, so I think it should be taken forward as a matter of urgency, and let the people who live there have their say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Yes, I tend to agree. Do we have agreement on postponing this decision till there's some further ward consultations take place? Councillor Dempster.
Only if it's in our gift to do so, because E&I might be the parent committee. 2.4 in the recommendation does say agreed to implementation of the various routes, Georgetown, etc., advertised, but we don't usually have authority to supersede decisions made by other committees. So just can you clarify we have the authority to do that, please? Or maybe Councillor Johnson might have to take it elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Tracy, do we have the authority to take that forward?
Yep, thanks, Chair. So under your delegations, which you'll see on the reverse of the front, in accordance with provisions of the Local Authorities Traffic Orders, Regulations 1999 under the Traffic Regulations Act, to determine road traffic orders. So my advice would be that members can defer consideration of this item until it has taken place with further.
Very good.
Thank you. I think we will defer this to a further meeting. Thank you. As I have no other business, that concludes our meeting, and I thank you all for your attendance and your comments, and thank you, Tony, for your attendance. Thank you.